When Brian invited me to speak here, he suggested me as subject the charming Nymphenburg porcelain figures of Boos-telli. And of course I was delighted. He probably wanted to give me and all of us the chance to looking together at the marvelous porcelain figures who are for me the most beautiful existing, especially most of all in the Rococo period. But of course, to feel their charm, you have to see the originals. In Munich, to see the charm, you have to see the originals. But in Munich, in the moment, it's almost not possible. Only some can be seen in the recently installed, well, 2 years ago now, installed galleries of the main galleries of Baroque and Rococo. But the rest of it is in storage in the moment, as we are reinstalling the whole upper floor of the Bavarian National Museum with 800 ceramics, porcelain, and faïences, and most of the Boos-telli figures. The vitrines are already ordered, so I hope that we will be able to open it really in May next year. Here you have one of the three-dimensional views of the designer. And the pieces, like already with the, as we can see at the main floor, with the LED spots, you can see the pieces much, much better. It's really worth, it's completely different because you see the pieces, you see everything, every detail. Not only with the ceramic, also with all the other objects, wonderful objects we expose. And you see, perhaps also with the vases here, that we do make some exchanges with the Munich residents. As from the Munich residents, we were given 150 years ago when the museum was founded and the residents was still residents. We were given many, many pieces, everything that they didn't need anymore. And, but at that time, they unfortunately divided sets, like these 2 sets of vases. We got always the middle part, and the rest was still in the residence, and of course it's a shame. And so we decided that the lower, the vase, set of vase with the green ground will be completely in our museum, and the other set will be completely in the residence. The one with the different colors, which was given to Amalia Wilhelmine, the dowager of the widow of the Emperor Joseph I, given by Augustus III of Saxony, as he had married the elder daughter of the dowager, called Maria Josepha. You all know about it. That was the wedding in 1719, the famous wedding with 4-week lasting celebrations, and the important example for all the later wedding ceremonies in Saxony. Maureen Cassidy Geiger and Monika Schlechter and others have done lots of research on it. What was very enlightening also for our Boos-telli subject. The vases came to Munich after the death of the dowager, as in 1742, as inheritage. As the second daughter of her, on the right you see her, was married in 1722 to the Bavarian Crown Prince Charles Albrecht, who in 1742 has just become Emperor Charles VII. We heard about it, of the Holy Roman Emperor, the only emperor not coming from the Habsburg family since the Middle Age, due to that the Emperor Charles VI, his predecessor, had only Maria Theresa and no son as heir, and therefore for 3 years it was possible that the Bavarian ruler became emperor. And afterwards, we will talk about Bavaria gave up all these dreams to be emperor. As you might know, well, I have been working on Boos-telli for quite a long time, and in 2004 we had an exhibition, and we also published a catalogue on Boos-telli and all this complete oeuvre, together with my remarkable colleague Alfred Ziffer, who would love to be here, but unfortunately he is ill. and should not be among too many people, and he sends you his very best regards. Since then, actually, not so many details have come up. Some, yes, some new FB mark pieces and so on, but with all the publications done in the meantime by Meredith Chilton, Maureen Cassidy Geiger, and so on, Daniela Antonin, and many others, about table culture, about dessert, and especially about the weddings in Dresden. So many better understanding has come up, and also important for the Bustelli figures. We now understand better how they were used and how they were presented. I called the paper Bustelli and the Impact of Meissen on the Nymphenburg manufactory. And indeed, Meissen was very important right from the beginning. The elector Max III Joseph, the son of the emperor we've seen before, he came to power at the age of 18 in 1745. And he gave up completely all these dreams to be emperor. And he wanted to live, well, he wanted his people to live in peace and strengthens the economy. And, well, peace, the most important good for everybody. He loved porcelain. He had witnessed how highly esteemed porcelain was at the Munich residence his whole life. And he was then the founder of the Nymphenburg manufactory. He had seen in the Munich residence already these East Asian porcelain bought by his grandfather in Paris, and with the mountings, the precious mountings, metal mountings made in France. And his father, here you see a portrait of his father, the later emperor, together with his wife. He, I have talked about this last year here, Charles Albrecht, he furnished the whole part of the Munich residence. He turned them into the so-called rich rooms to show during his whole life that he was worth to be the emperor. That was all the impact, the strengths he did to show it with all his furniture, with all the buildings he did. And on many of these side tables, there was porcelain exposed and had a ceremonial meaning. Pieces like this. And also Meissen porcelain, like these services put on silver stands, were exposed in the gallery, for example, belonging to these Reach staterooms. Moreover, the father, Charles Albrecht, the later emperor, he ordered this huge service of huge plates like this. All the big plates are Chinese porcelain. The little pieces for coffee and so on is Meissen porcelain, covered with gold and incised gold in Augsburg. And indeed, I have been trying to find other of these pieces, and actually in the whole world they don't exist. There are pieces like the one in the upper part, where the blue can be seen, for example, especially at the Pitti Museum, but those completely covered I have not found. So if you know some of them, I would be interested, because I believe that they all belong to this service that Charles VII, well, when he was still only Elector of Bavaria, he ordered this service to have not only a silver gilt service as he had, but also one extra service, also only to be put on a buffet to expose a very more refined gilt service, actually. And we know also that other significant pieces of Meissen came to Munich, as I told already before, as a legacy from the maternal grandmother, the Dowager Empress Wilhelmine Amalie. However, the decisive impulse prompting him to want his own porcelain manufactory was, of course, his marriage to Princess Maria Anna of Saxony, the granddaughter of Augustus the Strong, who had founded Meissen, as you know, and her father was the owner of the enterprise at that time, Augustus III. It was the famous double wedding, as his sister, Maria Antonia Walpurgis, was married at the same day to the brother of the bride, to Friedrich Christian, the heir apparent of Saxony. The double wedding strengthened the close ties which already existed between Saxony and Bavaria. As I told you before, the two mothers were sisters. Shortly after the engagement of both couples, the Bavarian bridegroom left for Dresden, arriving there the 28th of August, 1746. And the fact that he visited Meissen, the Meissen porcelain factory, only 68 days later is indicative for his special interest in porcelain. He even had lunch there and met the inspector Johann Gregorius Hörold, who was the director, the de facto director of the manufactory and the creator also of these tea services. 4 of them are still in the Munich residence, probably got by his father. At a special gesture of appreciation, he presented Hörold 100 ducats. And following the visit, 3 large and 10 small crates of painted Meissen porcelain was sent to Munich as a gift from the Saxon Elector. Unfortunately, we do not know what was in these crates, but probably quite a lot of what is existing still in Munich comes from that occasion. Still impressed by this visit to Meissen, it must have been around that time that the initial steps were taken to recruit experienced and skilled porcelain workers for Munich. Already in April 1747, there were very good news from a middleman in Vienna. The proxy weddings of these 2 couples, the legally binding marriages ceremonies, which took place at the same day at the bride's home in absence of the respective bridegroom, were celebrated at the 13th of June. Here you can see the table of the celebration in Dresden. Unfortunately, of Munich, much of the archive material has been burnt during the Second World War, but the Dresden really gives you much information. The bride was sitting in the middle, and the king and queen right and left to them, and the rest were the sisters and brothers of her. And the interesting, the sisters and brothers, we said this before, and interesting is that there are table paint designs of all these weddings at that time, showing that they were very similar, and especially they were all taken the same way as an example, one of the other. And interesting is that when the Saxon princess, after her proxy wedding, she stayed in Saxony, and the Bavarian bride was moving to Saxony, and then they celebrated again together in Saxony before the Saxon princess, who had become the Electress of Bavaria, moved then to Bavaria. And the connections between the 2 families continued to be very strong. At the wedding banquet, the dessert table was orned with a large centerpiece. This is not the one, as we don't have a design of the one of 47, but this one is 10 years earlier. But we can imagine by the description that it's more or less like this. The centerpiece was with many porcelain figures. And indeed, it was one of the very first occasions that porcelain was used at the Dresden table decoration. Only in January 1747, Maureen has pointed that out. It was that they used porcelain together with those materials like sugar and other perishable material. And at that wedding of the future Bavarian electress, at the centerpiece, presented a mountain with a temple of gods, very similar to the one we see on the advertisement all the time, because they had columns with flowers around. And the temple is especially for Diana, the goddess of Diana, which is clear because many of the electresses in Bavaria already, the mother-in-law loved very much hunting, and here you see the Amalienburg, a hunting little castle in the garden of Nymphenburg, which you can see also here in the Victoria and Albert Museum, shown as the example for Rococo art. And in here you have this, you see the mother-in-law and the father-in-law, who was just the future emperor, who was already dead. We have very little of these porcelain figures left. Those were made for these occasions. But we know that there were also mythological and allegorical figures fitting to the occasion, including the personification of the cities of Munich and of Dresden, and miniature representations of the Bavarian summer palaces of Nymphenburg and of Lustheim, with the canals as well. And here you have a presentation of Lustheim, which nowadays is a castle where the Meissen collection of Schneider bequest is exposed. And this was in the miniature, probably made of sugar in the middle of the table. We know that this sugar tradition, you use sugar on the table, sugar constructions, was also in Munich the same like in Dresden, because we do have also these wooden parts which Maureen has found in Dresden and also in Munich. There are quite some left in Munich as well. Doubtlessly, this magnificent sight must have made a lasting impression of the on the young bride, the new electress. It is not only her background that would lead us to suppose that she had special affinity to porcelain. At least 2 Meissen porcelain figures were created for her personally. And shortly after her arrival in Munich, the manufactory was indeed founded. We don't have a decree which says it, but they were a transformation of this Nymphenburg, no, not Nymphenburg, a small hunting castle outside of Munich, Neudeck it's called, where the manufactory first was founded, and also money was given. It does not exist anymore. And in 1761, the manufactory moved to Nymphenburg, and this gives the name we all know. But with Bustelli, he spent almost all this time in Neudeck, and not in only 2 years until his death. He spent then in Nymphenburg to know. But nevertheless, though they gave a lot of support, it did not work because nobody knew really how to make porcelain. That was the problem, only to want it. New impetus was given by Count Sigmund von Heimhausen, the master of mint, senior minor director and co-founder of the Bavarian Academy of Science as well. His portrait here was sensitively modeled by Bustelli and counts amongst the most great masterpieces of the porcelain art. And only when he gave his private money, but then only with the assistance of Joseph Jakob Ringler again, who was traveling all around southern Germany and gave the knowledge to all the manufactories. If you want to know more, you have to hear the lecture given by Aaron Manners 2 years ago, and on his website you can still see the movie of it, the video. And then with this, Monsieur Jakob Ringler, 7 years after the founding, in 1754 finally, it was possible to make porcelain. And the first large commission for the Munich court was this centerpiece for the proxy wedding of a sister of the elector, from Maria Anna Josefa, to the Margrave of Baden. He was the son of the famous Sibylla Augusta from Favorite Castle. And probably making a garden might be the memories of the electress that she suggested this, but garden always means freedom, because the ceremony was less strict like in the normal residence, and it was possible to meet people, also arranged meetings, a little bit hidden. Anyway, it's this centerpiece, and you see on the centerpiece the ladies and men walking around, and there must have been a change of design, because the little splittings of porcelain, like stones in the garden, were not meant to be right from the beginning. Josef Ponhauser was the first designer, but his figures can be seen. You have these gingerbread pedestals, all with green still, and his figures are very stiff and little heads only, so they are charming, but they are rather stiff. And Bustelli entered the manufactory while this commission was on work. He entered in November 1754. We do not know much about Bustelli, but if you look at the pieces, we understand that he must have had a sculptural education, and his figures are full of expression, graceful figures, and also humorous, as you will see. And he really watches how people move, especially you can see it here with this lady with a huge skirt. And she is moving towards the man standing there, and the whole skirt is moving. You can see with this other, the socle is really made to be not to be seen within the stone parts, and she can move it up to walk easily in. And you see with this lady how, but you have to see it in the original, how this whole huge crinoline is moving when she is giving him a sign with her fan. Of Bustelli we don't know much, only that the Bustelli family with the his coat of arms can be seen on a house in Italy, well, nowadays Italy, nowadays Switzerland, in Trania near Locarno. So his family is coming from there, but actually we do not know when he is born, as there are too many Francesco Antonio Bustelli there, and there is a new research being done there in the archive. But probably he was born in Germany because he was able to write the German writings, which is different at that time. And well, it's not the subject today of his religious figures, but with this we can see that at least during his education as a sculptor, he was really in Bavaria at the workshop of the famous artists Johann Baptist Straub, together with Ignaz Günther. To understand a little bit his humor, we can look at this table decoration, the lady walking and the soldier laughing because this dog was attacking the lady, and her bag is to be seen, and he really stands there. He should not move, but he is turning his head to see as much as possible. One other part of his very sensitive, nicely modeled are these little putos representing goddesses. And probably he made all his centerpieces in correspondence with the family, the Wittelsbach family, fitting to the palaces they had. For example, these goddesses were made probably for the huge center place of the Nymphenburg castle, where the huge grand saal is decorated on the ceiling with gods, the whole gods, and there is a correspondence in the little goddesses, of course, as Puto, which is a sort of charming humor to laugh about. And there is one other centerpiece, these pagoda figure with all the adorants, which is probably made for the little pagoda castle in the garden of Nymphenburg Castle, where you have paintings like on the left, and which is really corresponding very, very nicely. And we will have that centerpiece again. There are still some of the models we do not have in our museum, and we are interested to complete them. One was possible to buy, the very right one, the man leaning. It was 4 years ago here at the ceramic at the Art Antique Fair. And we found out that the model also changed a little bit, because with the tail standing up, it was too difficult. Very often it broke off, and therefore they changed it a little bit. Then one other centerpiece are these people from the city, from the street. But of course, they were not just depicting the normal people, but the famous celebrations they had for the costume parties at court, held in the guise of festivities or peasant weddings, fancy dressed parties that were also given at the Munich court during those very years, we know. Even at this centerpiece, you have beggars, but also they are dressed very decoratively. And you can see the pieces, the figures this side or that side, and you have a little bit different, and you can talk about it easily. Yep. And well, the masterpiece of Boos-telli is, of course, the Commedia dell'arte. 16 figurines showing the Commedia dell'arte. The main couple is Isabella and Octavio, the loving couple, but it's not still decided how it continues with them. He's giving her the kiss, but she's not convinced. You can see with her skirt whether she wants or whether she does not want. And her father, on the right-hand side, Pantaloon, he is always behind other ladies, but he wants for her the Capitano Spavento, a Spanish nobleman, to be the husband, not that fancy dandy. But he is coming, the Capitano Spavento, with his knife, and a friend of Isabella is crying and shouting and stop, and holding him back. We have now also made new restoration, for example, of the fingers according to, because years ago it was not so refined, it's exactly because these gestures are so important with Nymphenburg, with Boos-telli, as we found out. Also the coloring, the painting of the figures is extraordinary. These figures, these hands are so important. You know these designs probably in the theater books, in the gesture books of that time. In Italy, we know these gestures still very well. And if you look, for example, at that couple, Isabella and Octavio, his kiss, you know, he gives the kiss just like this. but he looks to be a little bit not self-assured, but with his left hand, which can be the bad hand, and he's hiding it, that means that probably he has something to hide. And, well, that could mean that he does not mean it so well as she wants it, because her fingers also can be read so easily. What we can read already with the body, with how if you look at the original, her skirt is shaving backwards and forwards. She does not know what I want, I don't want. And with the left hand she says, oh, please, quiet, be calm, slowly, slowly. With her right hand, it's a form of a ring. That's what she wants. She does not want to have a small, a little, how do you say, a love affair, but she wants to be married with him. When you look at the pieces, the figures, you see it, the body completely, you don't need, but these gestures prove that Bustelli is so well in expressing what he wants to say just by modeling. Bustelli, yes, he did have also possess engravings like all porcelain manufacturers had. But, for example, here on the right-hand side, you see the Mr. Octavio. He took these names from these engravings, but he took perhaps a little bit the costumes, but not how they were moving and not moving. I like the very best the Dottore, because everybody, when he comes on the stage, everybody knows that he is very self-assured and thinks everybody should listen to him. But what he says a lot, but actually he says nothing. And he knows a lot, but he has understood nothing. That's what everybody knows when he comes on the stage. And with the figure, you can understand this as well. He's so well-dressed, perfect. But he does not realize when he's scratching and thinking that his little belly is coming out and everybody can see it, so he's not as perfect as he thinks to be. And his wife, the lady Martina, he knows what he's telling again, and she goes shopping or whatever. And well, always Bustelli makes couples so that they really dance together. And we have also these Mezzottino and Lalage, very similar to the Meissen part. And, well, it's different if you look at them in the original as well. Meissen, there had been a comparison, yeah, almost finished, because the two families were so close that they were sending porcelain backwards and forwards. And, for example, we know of these 4 love groups. They were given to Dresden, they were sending to Dresden, and so we can compare. It's the very funny also how she's crying. She does not want to, at least she does, to be approached too much. But if you compare the two, the Meissen and the Nymphenburg, it's perhaps also a different type of style, as Kendler is still much more Baroque, and Bustelli is much more Rococo, much more refined, exaggerated. Also, for perhaps a reason why his negative molds have been destroyed then in the age of classicism, because it's too much Rococo. That is really the maximum point. Well, also to compare, of course, these sugar sweetmeat things, and to show how much the figures, the two families were close, was during the 7 Years' War. Almost the whole Saxon family came to Munich and stayed at Nymphenburg for 2 years. And you have the different people, for example, on the left-hand side in the wheelchair, it's Friedrich Christian, the crown prince, still crown prince in Saxony, gathered together. And 2 of the children, the Bavarian ruler did not have children, but the Saxon, his Saxon sister had many, and two of these portraits were portraits of the family of his sister, very similar, or well, to the Meissen ones made after the children of the sister married in France. Well, at the end, I just want to say that when Bustelli died after 10 years, we don't know much about him, but it was Dominikus Audicek who became modeler of the manufacture, and he again was very much influenced by Meissen. As you see, this centerpiece, they are much bigger than the ones of the Rococo period, large like this, and very much influenced by Baroque Bernini, you could say, but there are so many. I have just seen the reinstallation now at the V&A. They're very, very similar, and actually I would love to compare it more. So I just can ask you to come back to Munich next year in May when all these things will be exposed again. Thank you.